This is an internal video. We're going to talk about how you increase your personal efficiency and then move up to have team efficiency when you're a manager. We're going to cover the most common problems, and we can summarize it as the Eisenhower matrix, which is for personal efficiency, and nibbled to death by ducks, which is what happens when you have a team. Let's talk first about the Eisenhower matrix. Imagine a box, 4 squares. Top left, urgent and important. Those are things that you always take care of. Below that, urgent but not important. Those are things that most people are doing, but they're not important, but it's text messages, people interrupting them auto-interrupting, and there are things that are important but not urgent. And then there's things that are not important and not urgent. So between these 4 boxes, you're always going to put time into the urgent and important, and 99% of people, they shift into urgent, non-important, instead of important, non-urgent. So to be an effective doer where you feel like at the end of each day you're getting something done, you should be focusing on these things that are not squeaky wheel moments. But you know that when you do your prioritization for the day or for the week or for the quarter, you know that if you get these things done, then it's worthwhile. Let me ask you a question. How many times at the end of the day do you feel, oh, I've worked so hard, I've been busy, I've been responding to texts, I've been having meetings, I've been doing these different tasks, but you know you didn't get the most important things done. You feel like you were kind of running in place, but not really making that big impact, and those important things just kind of got away from you. And maybe in the morning you had the idea that you were going to do these things, but at the end it falls away from you, much like a New Year's resolution. And that's because most people, they go for the squeaky wheel. The squeaky wheel is the endorphins, where people love getting the dings, the alerts on email, constantly replying back on text messages or Facebook Messenger or Skype. And those things create interruption where it's not really that important. This is what we'll often see with Gen Z, where we'll be in a client dinner, and instead of paying attention to the client, notice that the client puts the phone away even though they're busier than the rest of us. You'll see that young adults will be always on their phone doing this and not even realizing that they're not even physically there or even mentally there in these meetings. And you might find that this hits close to home because you insist that you can multitask, and you absolutely cannot. The brain cannot multitask. There's lots of studies that show that, but just take my word on that and see whether you are, in terms of trying to do continuous partial attention, trying to always respond to these other people right away, thinking like, oh, I'm in the middle of this one thing, I'm playing golf with an important person, but I'm just going to sneak away every 30 seconds and text back these other people. You might think that you're getting away with it, but you're actually missing it. And not only is it disrespectful, but you're not even involved. And you won't even realize that you're not involved. So if you want to get stuff done, you have to prioritize intentionally. Obviously, the important urgent things you handle, like going to the hospital when someone's sick. But what are those things at the beginning of each day that are important but not urgent? And find yourself, how many times do you find yourself checking your phone? How many times do you feel like you're responding right away to text messages? And it might feel like nothing, but if you're like most millennials or even people that are not young adults, you might be checking your phone 200 times per day. That means you're never going to get the level of efficiency where you're going into flow. There's a book called Flow that talks about this. In engineering, there's something called switching cost. It's covered in this book by Edward Brooks called The Mythical Man Month. And the idea is that in order to do something that is sufficiently deep and it has a lot of detail, you've got to take something that, like an airplane, where you take off on the runway, you climb all the way up to cruise altitude, and it might take you 25 minutes to get up to cruise altitude. But the second you have an interruption, you are smack back down on the runway, and you have to take off all over again. So think about what you're doing accidentally to your productivity. If you're doing something in an operations role, meaning your performance is based on your coverage and being able to answer the phone and handling requests as they come in, where you're not handling things that require loading up a lot of detail, like programming requires that we as engineers put a lot of detail because we have to think about all these things in one line of code. One missed semicolon could completely destroy the program that you have. If you're doing account management, you can absolutely do interruptive operational marketing because it's not like you have to carry this large chunk of data that you have to store inside RAM. So think about, what are you doing to maximize your impact instead of trying to be as available as possible? So when you're able to manage yourself, your own queue, and you're prioritizing by importance and not by who is pinging you, then you have to intentionally look at who has a direct one-on-one personal private line to you. And the biggest thing we see with entrepreneurs is that they want to help their friends and family, and friends and family want to get help because they want to support their friend who's an entrepreneur. And this creates a difficult client situation because these clients, they don't pay you, but they also expect to be prioritized above all the other clients. So they're not paying. Meanwhile, you're neglecting your clients because after all, it's family, so you have to reply right away. Be careful about that. So be clear, is it a client relationship or are you doing it explicitly as a friend? And if you are, make it clear, especially when you become a leader. If you're just a consultant, a freelancer, you can do whatever you want with your time because other people aren't looking at your behavior as a model for everyone else. But if you're a leader, think about what you're doing and how that broadcasts a much larger picture to everyone else, because if they see that you're doing that, then they believe that they can do the same thing as well. And you won't even realize that your actions speak way louder than your words. That's personal efficiency. Now what happens when you put a team in place? Now instead of just your queue of communication and iteration and delegation, you have all of the tasks of everyone else that's hitting you up. If you can't take care of your own stuff, which is do, delegate, delete, then you're not going to be able to spin your wheel fast enough to handle everyone on your team, right? Does that make sense? If you're not on top of your priorities, there's no way you can manage a team. And I see a lot of people that want to coach a team, but their inbox is trash. So think about, this is what we call being nibbled to death by ducks. Imagine you're a manager. And now instead of just your queue as a worker of things that you have to do, you have the queue of everyone that you're managing or everything in the company, which is obviously more than you can do all by yourself. The biggest challenge of an individual contributor is being able to move beyond the fact that they are good at doing these particular tasks themselves and being able to delegate it out to other people without micromanaging. That means clear processes, clear training, to tolerate or train instead of, to train or terminate instead of tolerate, which is what Bradley talks about. So now you've got this queue, which maybe 20% is your stuff. And by the way, that's why you've got to be able to easily get to inbox zero. If you're struggling to get to inbox zero on just your own stuff, there's no way that you have enough headroom to be able to think about planning of where you want to take your company, of being strategic, because now you're just responding. You're constantly reactionary. If you're a leader, you have to be proactive. You have to initiate more often than you react. If you're constantly just reacting, then your business is about preventing disaster and you're just one step ahead from going out of business instead of thinking like, I got all my stuff taken care of by 11 a.m. Now I'm thinking about what do I need to initiate? Who are the people I need to reach out to? What are the important things I need to get done that isn't in response to some kind of emergency? If my inbox is completely, or task list or whatever, is completely full and I can't communicate, I'm drowning, there's no way you can think strategically. You are just a hoarder in your ability to project manage. Now let's talk about how this relates to being nibbled to death by ducks. This is a very, very common first-time manager problem because you're moving from being an individual contributor to being a manager where you're not the one doing the work. In fact, most of the tasks you have should be delegated out. So you have this list of tasks, this long queue of tasks, and people that know you who are personal friends, they believe that they can just jump the line. Because after all, when it was just you in the business and you had a couple clients, they could hit you up anytime and of course you'd want to respond. But now they're interrupting you. Now your schedule's full. Now you have different priorities that you have to stop to be able to handle these other items. So what they're doing unknowingly, because you enable them, is you're allowing them to jump the line, jump the queue. Can you imagine this? If for your business, you have a goal that you want to achieve. You've broken it down into different steps you have to achieve along the way, which are important but not necessarily urgent. Meanwhile, you're constantly being derailed by things that are urgent, by people who keep jumping the line. Therefore, whatever priority you set is instantly messed up because then you're allowing other people to set your priority for you. So ironically, you have to be unavailable to a certain degree and surround yourself with other people that enforce a process so that you don't have everyone coming to you. Are you in that situation where everyone's coming to you because you're used to executing the task yourself? You're used to, when you're in a difficult situation, just working harder? That's never going to get there. If you're moving from 10 clients to 70 clients, you're not going to get there because you don't have 7 times the amount of time. You've got to do it differently. The thing that got you to where you are is not the way that you're going to solve the problem. Being nibbled to death by ducks is allowing everyone to jump the queue. Therefore, if you have no priority, that's what happens when you allow people to jump the queue and have direct personal one-on-one access to you, then you have no priority anymore. Your priority is determined by whoever texts you, whoever hits you up on Messenger, whoever comes to your apartment, whoever, and they don't mean to derail you. They don't understand what you're doing. They don't understand your priorities. They don't understand, for example, if you're building a digital marketing business, the different pieces, because they believe that if they're there with you physically, then you should be spending the time with them. Of course, right? It would be impolite if someone came over to your place and you didn't give them their full attention. It would be rude. So think about how you balance your time so you have periods of availability. And make it clear that because you're running this ship, it's not that you are impervious and you're putting this layer that's shielding you from ever talking to anybody and you're some king on the hill that everyone is a minion down here. It's that you make yourself available during key periods. Think about what that looks like. Maybe you have office hours. Maybe you have a weekly team call. You have to have some kind of outlet where people can learn what you care about, where employees in your business, could be Mark Zuckerberg or Jim from Costco or Sergey and Larry from Google. They have weekly office hours where they talk about what's going on in the company. So think about how you can still communicate, but you're not on call and having everyone come directly to you. In fact, if you're a CEO and you have everyone coming directly to you, I would argue that you're an operator who can't actually manage a business because you're limited by the number of people that have direct access to you, and you'll never work your way out of that. That's being nibbled to death by ducks. If you find that you're in that situation, the solution is systems and processes. Think about the things that are repetitive. Literally go back and look at your screen time and see how many times you were getting interrupted. You might be shocked when you look at screen time. How many times have you picked up the phone? If you pick up that phone more than 10 times a day, I guarantee you every one of those interruptions, if you're an engineer, is costing you 30 minutes to an hour. So you're not getting deep productive thought because you're constantly being distracted, right? So if you're doing things that don't require deep thought, where you can just bang on with your headphones, doing things like working a minimum wage job or what have you, that's fine. But if you're doing something where there's a larger vision, you're coordinating between other people, you're building software, you're an entrepreneur, you have to coordinate between really key relationships, you're gonna miss that nuance. So understand, do, delegate, delete is your personal efficiency. When you have that down, and only when you have that down, can you move to team management, which is communicate, iterate, delegate, so that you don't get nibbled to death by ducks. I hope you guys find that useful.